This is Adrian Bridges from Michaels and Booth, and today we're going to talk to you about probably the most important type of insurance you can purchase on your car. And in Florida, that's what's called uninsured
It's
or
not.
underinsured coverage, which we in the profession commonly refer to as UM coverage. UM is unique in that it's there to pay you and your loved ones or anyone that's occupying your vehicle directly for damages or losses you sustain as a result of injuries from a car accident. Unlike no-fault or PIP benefits that are paid directly to your medical providers or that only compensate you for a certain portion of your lost wages, UM coverage is there to pay you in one of two situations. The first is if you're hit by a driver who has no insurance whatsoever. That driver is considered uninsured, and your UM coverage will actually act as insurance for that driver. The other case is if you're seriously injured in an accident and the person who hit you doesn't have enough insurance. Well, in that case, they're considered underinsured. And again, your UM coverage would act as additional insurance for that individual. Now, here in Florida, all auto policies that are sold with a bodily injury portion, which as we discussed in other videos is unfortunately not required here in the state of Florida, but most drivers do purchase that coverage. And if you do, you have to be offered UM, uninsured, underinsured coverage. Now, there are some states that offer those two coverages as something separate. You can purchase uninsured but not underinsured, or vice versa. Well, here in Florida, we've made it easy. Under our laws, uninsured or underinsured coverage is the same type. And you have to reject it by signing a very specific document that advises you of your rights and really explains to you all the reasons why you shouldn't reject it and should in fact purchase it. But it's offered in two forms, stacking and non-stacking coverage. And so stacking and non-stacking UM coverage, although they provide similar sounding benefits, they're very, very different, and you need to be careful when you decide which one you want to accept or reject. First, we're going to talk about stacking coverage. And in Florida, that's the way the coverage is sold as a default. So if you don't reject it, if you don't modify it, you buy stacking UM coverage. So what does stacking UM coverage mean? Well, as the name implies, one of the most obvious benefits is that you can stack or add the coverage in cases where you own more than one vehicle. So let's say you have a family and you have 2 or 3 vehicles. If you want, you can purchase UM coverage by stacking on 3 different vehicles. Use easy math. Let's say you buy what we call a 10-20 policy and you buy it on 3 vehicles. Well, if you or a family member are involved in an accident, then that coverage, you would stack it by the number of vehicles you purchase the coverage. So 1020 plus 1020 plus 1020 would give you 30,000 slash 60,000 in coverage. In most cases, though, that stacking coverage only benefits you or a resident relative. So if your kids live with you, or your wife, spouse, husband, any family members that live in the household are usually covered. But other people that are riding in your car, they don't get the benefit of that stacking coverage. So really, it's a decision you make to protect your family. The other less obvious benefit to stacking coverage is that it follows you and your family through every vehicle that you own. So let's say you have one vehicle that's owned and insured by one company and you buy stacking UM coverage on that one vehicle. But let's say you have 2 other vehicles that you insure with different companies and you don't buy stacking UM coverage on those vehicles. In fact, you reject it outright. Well, if that first vehicle has stacking coverage, then every vehicle in your household is entitled to that underinsured or uninsured coverage. That ensures that if you or your family are in an accident in a vehicle that you didn't purchase UM coverage on, as long as one policy in your household has stacking coverage, you will still be protected. Generally speaking, stacking coverage is more expensive than non-stacking coverage. And another consideration is that if you do purchase stacking on one vehicle and reject coverage on other vehicles, although you and your family members will be protected when riding in those other vehicles. If your friend, neighbor, somebody who's not related to you, if they're riding in a vehicle that you chose to reject UM coverage on, they won't get that protection if you're involved in an accident. Now, the other type of coverage we have in Florida is what's called non-stacking coverage. And just like the name implies, non-stacking means that you can't add policies together. So if you have two vehicles and you buy non-stacking UM coverage on both of those, you don't get to add them up. You just get the coverage for whatever vehicle you're riding in. Generally, non-stacking coverage is going to be less expensive than stacking coverage, so it may be offered to you as a way to save money on your policy. But you want to think long and hard about whether or not that's the right choice for you and your family, or the way that you drive those vehicles. Because although it may save you some money on your monthly premiums or your 6-month or annual premiums, overall those savings won't be all that significant, and you are potentially giving up some very important coverages. The other risk is that if you own more than one vehicle and you purchase non-stacking UM coverage on only one of those cars, if you get into another car accident where you've rejected UM coverage, the non-stacking coverage will not protect you because you weren't in the vehicle that had that coverage at the time. Now, that doesn't apply if you only own one vehicle, has non-stacking coverage, and you get in a car accident in somebody else's car. Your UM coverage will still apply in those scenarios. But for families that have more than one vehicle, it's important to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to one of those horrible situations where the coverage won't apply. So those are the basic differences between stacking and non-stacking coverage. Now, the obvious question is, which one is right for me? And again, what we suggest to everyone is take a look at the number of vehicles you have, because you want to make sure you make the decision about whether or not it's a viable option to buy stacking coverage on just one of those vehicles and reject it on the others, or whether you could save money by purchasing non-stacking coverage on each of those vehicles, or you purchase stacking coverage on both vehicles at a lower amount because you know that those numbers will add together. Those are all considerations that should be discussed with an insurance agent when you're looking at premiums and trying to decide what coverage is best for you and your family. At the end of the day, though, we always recommend that you purchase UM coverage, and you purchase as much as you can possibly afford. The best type of insurance is the type you have but never need, but if you or a loved one are involved in an accident, uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage is the only guarantee that there will be insurance that you can go after if you're injured. Because remember, as we discussed earlier, in the state of Florida, drivers do not have to purchase bodily injury insurance, and they may not have sufficient coverage to protect you or your family if you're injured. If you or a loved one have been involved in an accident and you have questions about what your rights are under Florida law, give us a call today for a free consultation. At the same time, if you just have questions about your auto policy and you want to make sure that you purchase the right insurance, or if the insurance you have will cover you and your family, give us a call as well. We'd love to discuss your policy with you at no charge. You can call us today for a free, no obligation consultation at 1-800-438-3606, or visit us online at www.michaelsbooth.com or www.forthevictims.com.